entering into an agreement extending the nuclear agreement. And although, thank God, I must say that we did not rush into it. It's pending. And let's hope that the United States will be able to hold back and not give Iran additional money to export terrorism, what they've done. Let's welcome the Deputy Consul General.
Thank you, and Shavua Tov, and good evening. And I want to, first of all, to thank you, Rabbi Schneier, for inviting me, and it's a privilege to join you every year in this event, and thank you for inviting me also to share some thoughts about this topic that is actually at the top of the Israeli foreign policy and security priority. I think that I'll say several things. One, first of all, Rabbi Schneier, you mentioned the existing world order, and I think that when we're talking about Iran, the revolutionary Iran, we're talking about a country, a regime that actually has been actively undermining the existing world order. The existing world order of, you can see it in different places. You can see it challenging the authority, and Rabbi Schneier, you're in touch and you're speaking with many of the ambassadors and the heads of states and the foreign ministers. Iran is undermining the authority of the P5, the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, that are also the nuclear weapons states that have legitimate nuclear weapons, and by aspiring to reach this goal of at least a threshold country, but maybe also acquiring and developing real nuclear weapons. This is how Iran has been for many decades, challenging the international and undermining the existing world order. So for us in Israel, I think that today we're back to, I think that to the old 3 top priority of Israeli foreign policy. I think that you know what they are. Number 1, of course, is Iran, and number 2 is Iran, and number 3 is also Iran. And on the table we have, it's not clear where things stand at the moment, but there are talks between Iran and international powers, the P5+1, about a new agreement, a new and old agreement, I have to say. And Israel publicly, explicitly, without any question, opposes signing this current new agreement with Iran that is actually quite an old agreement with Iran. It's important to emphasize, I want to say one thing that is very, very clear and should be very clear and very important for us to say in this context. During this very sensitive period, we maintain an intimate dialogue with the American administration on this agreement, on its prospects to the future, and the broader view of the Middle East and the international community and the international peace and security. And the United States is our closest ally. The American administration is our closest ally. This President Biden, is our closest ally. And Anthony Blinken and the members of the American administration. And we maintain this, but it is important for us to keep this very close bond and very special relationship And again, this intimate dialogue at this current stage as an important factor, as an important basis for our peace and security, and make sure that we maintain this dialogue and keep it above all disagreements. Allies and friends can disagree. Why are we concerned about the agreement? Because we believe that, first of all, it is not based on the principles of stronger and longer. When I'm saying stronger, this current agreement, I have to say that Iran has made dramatic progress in enrichment capabilities, first of all. Why are we focusing on enrichment capabilities? Because you can actually see it. If you want to develop a nuclear weapon, for example, here, you need to reach a level of a weapon above 90% of weapon level enriched uranium. All the other technologies can be developed in a room much smaller than this. So you can actually see it. So for us, this is the line. This is the threshold. And Iran now has stated that they enrich uranium beyond the 60% quality, and then Iran continues to escalate its nuclear program way beyond any plausible civilian justification. This is not what I'm saying. This is not me saying that. Actually, this is a direct quote of a joint statement made by the United Kingdom, France, and Germany. And I have to say that in different words, the Director General of the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, said the same thing. So they're moving forward. They're moving forward. And the agreement, the second part of stronger is that this agreement is not stronger compared to the 2015, is that it does not address the Iranian behavior in the Middle East, in supplying weapons to the Iranian terrorist organizations, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Islamic Jihad, other organizations in Syria, in Yemen, the Houthis, in Iraq. It does not address the terror activities of Iran. It does not address the cyber attacks, and we read the news only this week about an Iranian cyber attack in Albania. It's not only our threat. It's not only a threat aimed at Israel. And when I'm saying the agreement is not longer, that basically the 2015 JCPOA has sunset clauses. A day in which the agreement terminates and basically is being terminated, and Iran can proceed in developing nuclear weapons. And these sunset clauses are very, very close in the very near future. So what is required? What is required from our point of view is a return to a maximum pressure at the moment. Iran is in clear violation of all its commitments. We're talking about political and economic pressure, sanctions, what we call a snapback, basically snapping back all the sanctions, again, due to the Iranian violation. And basically what we're telling the world, you just need to say enough. Enough. So we have basically a chronic problem in the region, which is Iran, that touches different aspects of our lives and our security. And I think that today the Middle East is at a crossroad, and I think that the international community needs to choose either to go to a possibility, a probability of Iran developing nuclear weapons. And this is a world in which, or a Middle East in which, under the nuclear umbrella, Iran can pursue its aggressive and destabilizing policies in the Middle East, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen, and elsewhere. And further strengthening also, a nuclear Iran could actually trigger a nuclear weapon arms race in the Middle East. So we're talking about a Middle East that is unstable, and actually a world that is unstable and unsafe. And the second option, the second scenario, this is the scenario that we would like to see. One, prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons in a very assertive and clear way. And secondly, to form, and we've started doing it together with the American administration, to form a regional security architecture in the Middle East that's based on the Abraham Accords, that are a phenomenal success, and we hope that many other countries actually would join this alliance and form a camp of peace in the Middle East against the Iranian aggressive behavior, and in order to promote, together with the American administration, to promote peace, security, prosperity, in line with in the spirit of the Abraham Accords. So this is what we would like to see. We choose the second option, and like many of our neighbors in the region, and we do hope that the international community, especially those who negotiate with the Iranians today, choose the same. So I want to take this opportunity, first of all, again, to thank you, Rabbi Schneier, and to thank all of you, and wish you all Shana Tova, and good news, and health, and really also safety and security also here in New York. So thank you very much. Shavua tov.
Wherever Jews live, depending on the policy of that government, will affect their well-being. Morocco, today, direct flights. Elizabeth and I were in Morocco and were hosted by the king. The Jews of Morocco today are so proud to be connected with Israel. He is exceptional, the king, to begin with. But the hopeful development, as we heard, are the Abraham Accords. And they have expanded. Now, President Herzog going to Bahrain, Prime Minister, many, many economic joint ventures between UAE and Israel. The first Jewish wedding, public, in Dubai, with the royal members of the royal court participating. Now, this was a no-no. All I can tell you, when I served in the United Nations, we had major problems. All the Arabs would just walk out in protest. All the Russians, Eastern Europeans, even the United Nations has changed in this respect. As we always have here at Park East Synagogue, Holocaust Remembrance Day. 2000, it was Ambassador of Israel. And when this was adopted, or Holocaust denial, no objections by some of the Arab countries. Or having the head of the World Muslim League speaking from our pulpit. Or it shows how, thank God, the picture has changed. When it came Passover and Easter time, Jews were always frightened about being persecuted. Since Vatican II, times have changed. You have Pope Francis, who openly stated, you cannot be a Christian if you're an anti-Semite, or Pope Benedict coming over here. So again, if we are alert and we're united, then we can accomplish many, many things. And we're very fortunate that the current director in Vienna of the Atomic Energy Commission has really taken a very strong position. At first, he was prevented from visiting, some of the potential nuclear sites. Was accused of being manipulated by the Zionists. But the most important thing is our own unity. Our own unity. If we are united, we will prevail. If we are divided, we will fail. That's what it's all about. So, we have Governor Frankel, you want comments about the economic development, the new developments? Come on. You're the expert here.
Shabbat Tov. Thank you. Normally I receive 3 minutes advance warning, and today it was 3 seconds. But I guess that's life. That's what Rabbi Schneier is all about. When he thinks that something needs to be done, it was already done. So, na'aseh v'nishma. I'm not going to tell you now about the Israeli economy and about anything else of this type. We are ready for Slichot service, which is the greatest thing that one can have tonight. But I'll only tell you a few words as a corollary to what was said up to now. The world has been besieged by a series of shocks that were completely unprecedented. And I'm sure we will prevail, but we should be aware that after the great financial crisis, which was happening just a few years ago, the world started to recover. Then came the pandemic, which paralyzed us and changed the way we do things. And we do things now through this camera much more than through in person. And it seems that we are coming out of it. There are only less than 1 million people here with masks. And thank you for being so careful, you should. And then we started to get out of this, and came the war, not a military operation, came the war or the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia, which we are still there. Beyond the unbelievable devastation, human and non-human, there are two major issues that affect the world. Even before that, a large part of the world was suffering from the dangers of famine, of food crisis, and on the other side, the energy crisis. Those were the two major things that were overriding. And now comes this war, and because it is in the Ukraine-Russian nexus, the largest reservoir of wheat and the capabilities of moving it around has been, in a way, damaged. The issue of supply of gas, which the Rabbi spoke about, has been weaponized, something that was part of the civility of rules, that these parts we are not touching, they are not touching. So we have another challenge. And this challenge is going to be with us for a while. Of course, I'm an economist, so it has also inflationary consequences and interest rates rising. But let's not be mistaken. The rise in interest rate, painful as it is the cure, not the disease. The disease was the reasons for the rise in prices and the inflation which came about from what we were talking about. For a long time, the world, since in fact the early 70s, when we had the oil crisis and the oil embargoes many years ago, we did not have what we call in the economics language supply shock. Mostly we had demand shocks. Governments ran deficits, they inflated the economy, prices went up, output went up, etc. But now comes the supply shock. And the supply shock is something which is very different. And add to it the challenges to the supply chain, which originates from the disruptions from China. The pandemic caused in China, after all, a lot of closures, with impacts on the ability to produce and to supply and to ship a lot of stuff that we are all dependent on. Whether you like it or not, China is either the first or the second trading partner of each and every economy in the world. Each one. And the rabbi was talking about interdependence. And he is right. The word globalization is there. It changes its form when there are fragmentations, but interdependence is still there. When somebody sneezes, somebody else gets pneumonia. But the point is that this is the environment that we are operating in. Within this context, the technology that Israel brings to the world and to itself is indeed the major issues that we can do. I'm going after Rosh Hashanah to visit a good friend of the rabbi, the Prime Minister of Singapore, Prime Minister Lee, who was honored here just 2 years ago. He came to the synagogue. He's the son of Lee Kuan Yew. And the story of the bond between Israel and Singapore is still to be told, but I can only say that when Lee Kuan Yew met Prime Minister Ben-Gurion at the time, people from two parts of the world, they look even different. One is Chinese tall, one is from where was it? From Ukraine or whatever, that Ben-Gurion came, very short. But they found something in common. They were both leaders of a small country that has no natural resources, that are surrounded by enemies. In the case of Singapore, it was Malaysia, India, and China. That their enemies want to throw them to the sea. There's a different sea, the Mediterranean and their sea, but still there's something a lot in common. So what can they deal with? Of course, they can give empathy to each other, but they can invest in human capital. The highest paid, and therefore in the status, minister in Singapore is the Minister of Education. And the same token, the investment in human capital is such an important thing, and indeed the circle is now closed by the rabbi hosting this morning the future deans of most of the Israeli universities coming here to Park East Synagogue. They were walking more than an hour because they are observing the Shabbat in order to come here for the service this morning. So I can tell you one thing. We can talk about all the tzores, all the troubles that we have, and surrounded by Iran and all of this. I will only add one more thing. Indeed, as the Deputy Counsel indicated, Counsel General, there are three priorities, 111, not even 1, 2, 3, 111. But in Israel, we have one more important priority, which is a real challenge. And we have had too many elections during the past few years, which means the problem is not in the democratic system that brings it about, but in the society where there is a real rift. And when there is a real rift, it's an issue. And therefore, we need to find the recipe to narrow gaps. Israel is so good when it is besieged. In wars, everyone is together. But we need to realize that also in peace, one needs to identify things. And the reason is that we need to recognize that unity does not require identity. And you can be unified and yet maintain your different views, but still we are all in the same boat. And I think that our boat is not a very small one because it expands itself from Tel Aviv to Park East Synagogue. So it's a very large boat in a very large ocean, and the Rabbi is the best skipper to bring us around. And thank you so much, and Shana Tova.
Former professor of the University of Chicago, Yaakov Frankel. In fact, this morning you met a student of yours. But really, thank you. This was totally, I didn't even forewarn you that I'm going to call on you. But since you're here, and he stayed specifically to be with us, and then you're leaving back to Israel for Rosh Hashanah. So you're always, always very much welcome here. We have a few minutes for just 3 questions. Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
I'm still trying to get my mind around the fact, and please correct me if I'm wrong. The U.S. is negotiating a deal with Iran, but Iran says, hey, don't you dare sit in the same room as us. You're going to have to go through an interlocutor. And one of those governments is Russia. It's bizarre.
Don't ignore some of the quiet diplomatic contacts.
I hope so.
You'll find that much is said about no contact, but for a while, we used intermediaries, but they're now contacts. They are contacts. Any other questions? Well, thank you. You satisfied everyone's curiosity. And the only other thing I want to mention, that is the so-called rift or alienation between the American Jewish community and Israel. And this is a serious situation because unfortunately some of our young people are more committed to tikkun olam, saving the world, and are not that concerned about the state of Israel. Also, it's very, very painful, some of the left-wing attacks, demonstrations, openly, particularly on campus. Anti-Zionism is really nothing but anti-Semitism. And these are the things we have to deal with. So as we have emunah about the future, ani ma'amin be'emunah sheleima b'viat HaMashiach, and maybe, according to Yeshayahu, what we read this morning, you need these difficult times before the nations will open their eyes and the world will be saved by Mashiach now. So maybe we're closer to that dream of a world living in peace. So I wish all of you, speaking about peace, Shana Tova, a healthy, blessed, and peaceful New Year. Healthy, blessed, and peaceful New Year. And again, I want to reassure both, you know it, and Jerusalem knows it. We are a proud Zionist congregation. No reservation, no hesitations. No reservation, no hesitation. Okay? And, Yakala, continue making that chachma that Hashem gave you and use it in the world scene. Use it in the world scene, okay? And then you're always at home. By the way, he happens to be one of our members. No stranger in the midst, okay? All the best. Shana Tova will go upstairs, and then we'll continue with the Slichot service. Thank you.